We're going to continue on today talking about Timothy and Paul. Kind of switching gears just a little bit, but I've been reading through just 1st and 2nd Timothy this week. And I don't know, I've just kind of fallen in love with it. You know, you open the Bible and you start reading and you think, wow, why didn't I catch that before? You know, or, that's interesting. And then you start trying to find different versions of the Bible, or you try to find notes that go along with, and trying to figure out just the relationship that Paul has with Timothy, and then what kind of relationship Timothy has with Paul. And if you read these two books in the Bible, you find that there's just a great love between these two guys. That that Paul really desires to fill Timothy with everything he's got, you know. And then I think it's the same for Timothy, that he just soaks it up. Whatever Paul says, wherever Paul goes, whatever Paul writes, he's interested in hearing it. And so this is about the second Timothy is written about 70 years after the death of Christ, and Paul writes to him, and let's just kind of read through a few verses together. It says, Paul, an apostle of Christ Jesus, by the will of God, according to his promise of life that is in Christ Jesus, to Timothy, my dear son. Grace, mercy, and peace from God the Father and Christ Jesus our Lord. So basically, we're getting through the hellos. How are you? It's good to see you. Good to hear from you. And then in verse 3, it says, I thank God whom I served as my forefathers did, with a clear conscience, as night and day I constantly remember you in prayer. Recalling your tears, I long to see you. He cares about Timothy. He truly, he misses him at this point. They've been separated. Paul writes these letters from prison. So that I might be filled with joy, I've been reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois. I'll just tell you right now, when I read sometimes, it's almost like dyslexia. It flips on me, and I know what it says, but it doesn't come out of my mouth. And so, anyway, so his grandmother Lois, and in your mother Eunice. And so let's talk about that for just a second. Paul is saying that he's seen something in Timothy's family. Now, more than likely, in the stuff that I've studied, it says that Timothy's dad probably did not serve God. Now, I don't know how they found that out factually. He's not mentioned where I can find it. But it was a grandmother, and then it was a mother that had faith in God, and that had taught and shown Timothy all about who Christ truly was. And Paul's writing here, and he's saying, that is in you, Timothy. That legacy of knowing who Christ is there. I know it is, because I know your grandmother and I know your mother, and you've got a really strong foundation. Timothy's special. I want to ask you a question this morning, and that is, what kind of legacy do you leave? You know, I think when I die, whenever that is, I think I want people to know me for certain things, right? I mean, I thought when I was young, Cooper, I thought when I was young, I wanted people to know me for playing basketball. Because that's what I loved the most, was basketball. That doesn't seem that important anymore, you know? My shot's not like it was. I can't run up and down the court as fast as I used to. You know, the kids make fun of you when you play them, and they beat you. So I don't want to be known for basketball anymore, I've decided. I don't want to be known for things maybe that really doesn't matter if I was good or bad at. I think I want to be known for what I have been able to pass on. I want to be known maybe as a godly man. I want to be known that anytime somebody called me, I did my very, very best to meet the needs that they had, whatever it took. I want at my funeral for people to say the same things about me that when I went to a pastor here in town, Rick Vandenberg, when I went to his funeral, his children stood up and they said, "He's the same man that you knew." Meaning that he acted the same at home and he acted the same in the community. So he wasn't like this guy that acted like he cared and wanted to meet needs and tried to pastor people and then went home and neglected his family and screamed at them and yelled at them and wasn't the same, wasn't consistent. He was consistent all the way through his life. And so when he passed unexpectedly, his legacy now is he was always the same. He was a good, solid man. So what do you want your friends to say about you? You know, he was a pretty decent guy. You know, he knocked off work early occasionally and didn't tell anybody. He was kind of that way. That would be bad. I mean, that's not real bad, is it? You know, like, you know, he was a pretty good guy. I mean, you know, occasionally he'd throw a few back and, I mean, you know, it wasn't really that bad. That's what I want to be known for. What do you want to be known for? Because whatever you want to be known for, your friends, your children, that's your character. That's who you are. That's what you are in the eyes of people. And as Paul looks at Timothy, he says, I can see that you've got this strong, strong foundation. And so I realized real quickly that, oh my goodness, this isn't just about me. This isn't just about my relationship with God. This is about the foundation that I lay, not only for me, but for others. So when people look at you and they say, oh, you just throw a few back, I don't know sometimes if they can connect the godliness and maybe the point where you cross the line just a hair and it becomes ungodly or maybe even questionable. And so the foundation that we lay is really confusing. And I don't mean for this to be like a heavy sermon this morning. I know it's turned out that way, and I apologize. Just from the very beginning when I walked in the door, it's just that way. And so, you know, you got about 12 minutes left. It's more bearable than the pageant last night, the Rose Rock pageant. A lot of you guys were there. I got there at 6. I left at 11:30. Oh, it was really good. I'm really not bashing it. It was really good. I learned to wave and all those things. Listen, Paul was saying, I know, Timothy, that you have what it takes. And I think the point that I'm just trying to get across this morning, maybe I'm having a little difficulty doing, is that make sure you have that you have what it takes so that your wife, so that your husband, so that your family, so that your friends around you, that you can build a foundation that's strong enough that they see Christ in you. All right? So that when they look for direction and when they look for guidance, they can point to you and they can say, I want to be like you. Not that we're the same. There's no difference in us, you know. We do the same things, right? And then you say you love Him. You say that you love God, but we're the same, right? And the answer to that is no, we're not the same. We're chosen. We're different. We've laid things aside that we shouldn't be a part of, and we've taken up the cross, and we have followed Him in such a way that, can't you see that in me? That's what we have to say. And Paul sees it in Timothy. Don't you love it when somebody sees something in you? When they say, wow, that's good. Steve, Steve took me up. He's a pilot, okay? And so he takes me up in this cool plane. You can go on Facebook and you can see us, I think, actually in flight if you go to my Facebook account. It's amazing, you know? And we were doing things that I just never done before. I mean, we flew over the church and we're doing these, you know, these things, and I'm about to throw up in the back seat. Steve is a good pilot. If he wasn't a good pilot, I would have not gotten in the plane. It was a little bitty puddle jumper thing, you know, and it, to be honest with you, it kind of scares you. You know, you get in and it's like smaller than a Yugo. It's a little bitty. That's an old car that they don't make anymore. It's a small car. And so, he's a good pilot. And it feels good when somebody says, man, you're good at what you do. It's that you're saying, yeah. And that's what Paul's saying to Timothy in this letter. He's looking and he's saying, I see your family. They've given you a foundation. Now, here's the deal. It says, for this reason, I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God. To fan into flame the gift of God, which is in you through the laying on of hands. And so, he's telling him, take what you got and fan it into flame. Now, I don't know if you know what that means or not. I'm sure that you do. But if you don't, it's like this. I went to a camping site. I didn't actually camp, but I went there. And I was trying it out, you know, and seeing if I liked camping before we actually decided that we were going to camp. So I was with some friends, and they were trying to build a fire. And so they put some sticks on this, you know, the dirt in this little pit-looking thing. And then they had like matches of some sort, and they took paper towels and rolled them up, and they kind of threw it in there, and they lit the paper towels, and it just went whoosh, and it was gone. Well, that didn't really work too well. And so they started to try it again. They lit a match and put some paper towels, and then it hit me. I've seen on this on Man vs. Wild. So they take leaves and they put it on the sticks, and he lit the paper towel, which went whoosh. But then all of a sudden, underneath those leaves and those sticks, you could just see a little bit of smoke, just kind of barreling out, just a little bit. And then, you know how you look at it, you know, a fire, and you're like, come on, baby, come on, you can do it, you know. And then sometimes you would like blow on it. You know, you got, and you can just see it just starting to smoke a little bit more. And then before too long, if that air can get to it, it takes off. I was doing a wedding here at the church, and I got a phone call, and they said, your pasture is on fire. And I'm like, my pasture? And I just left the wedding and I went straight to the house. And I get out there, and the firemen of Noble are there, and I have big round bales of hay. And they tell me, I didn't really see any fire. They had all the fire out. But I could see smoke. It was smoldering. And they told me, they said, you're going to have to unroll all these round bales of hay. And I'm like, oh, those are only like $100 a piece. And they said, well, there's just no other way. I said, they're not really burning. I mean, really, I don't see any flames. They said, but what happens is when the air catches it, after a while, it'll spark back up and it'll start blazing again. And if you don't put it out now, then it's going to be blazing later. You're going to have to watch it all night. So we had to unroll all of that hay and wet it down, make sure that it didn't spark back up. But anytime wind would come and start to blow, it would start that embers back up and it would flame again. You've had a fireplace, right? This is what Paul is showing Timothy. He's saying the gifts that God has given you, you need to fan them into flame. You need to spark it up. You need to blow on it. You need to catch a wind. You need to make sure that it starts to rise, that somehow it starts burning in you. The gift that God's given you, the gift that God had given him was to be able to preach and to be able to teach others. Elders of the church laid hands on him, and he was given a gift from God. And Paul is saying, in you, since your parents, your mom and your grandmother, have given you this strong foundation, this godly foundation, now all you have to do is fan the flame and then let it burn. Fan the flame and then just watch it burn. Paul knew that Timothy would go to the church of Ephesus, a church that needed him, a church that was really suffering at the time. They were sent. He said, Timothy, go. And if you're on fire for God and you know what he is because you've experienced him all of your life, and when you go there and you start to teach and you start to preach and you start to tell those people who God is, they're going to listen to you. And like wildfire, it will sweep through. It's going to change a whole church. It's going to change a whole community. It's going to make it different. What's the legacy you're going to leave today? Did your parents, did your friends, did they invest in you enough that you have a strong foundation that if you needed to or if you wanted to, that you could fan something into flame, that you could catch fire, that you could go with it and you could help somebody out? You say, I wasn't taught anything as a kid. My parents never invested in me in a godly way. Never. You should have seen it. It was horrible, right? That's not my story, but maybe it's yours. And if that's your story today, I say you be the first. You be number one. You start with the strong foundation with you. You take this word and you ingest it. You take this word and you grab hold of it in such a way that you can start this foundation that's needed for your family's sake and for the people that are around you, because you're the only Jesus people see. And Paul knows that when he sends Timothy into Ephesus, this church, Timothy might be the only Jesus that people see. You can do it, Timothy. You go and you spark a flame there and you let it burn and you let it run through this church and just see if they'll change. And they will. As a dad, it's my responsibility to have a strong foundation, to fan into flame the Spirit of God in my family's life so that it burns deep within. As a mother, it's your responsibility. As a friend, it's your responsibility. I want to read real quickly verse 6 over once again and then go into verse 7. For this reason, I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For God did not give you the spirit of timidity. You know what that is? It's fear. He didn't make you fearful. But He gave you a spirit of power, and He gave you a spirit of love and of self-discipline. He's saying, Timothy, I know when you go into this church and you start telling people about God, when you go into this place that's not serving and you tell them they need to serve, don't have a spirit of fear. Don't be set back and He's saying you just need to go for it. Close your eyes, jump in with both feet. Reckless abandonment. That's what my football coach used to tell me. With reckless abandonment. It means with everything you got, you better hit them, sucker. You better knock them hard. With just don't care about anything else. You get them. That's what Paul is trying to tell Timothy this morning. Lay it all aside, and with everything you got, you go into this place and you tell them about God because it might be their last chance. And don't be scared. Don't be afraid that you don't have the ability to do it. You're sitting here today and you say, I have not served God like I should have served God. And so when I turn that stuff around and I start trying to serve God around my family and around my friends and around the people that I hang out with, then they think that I'm weird or that I'm strange or don't worry today. Do not be fearful about what people say about you. For goodness sakes, God is the one that you have to be worried about. And He says, I'm not going to give you a spirit of fear. You don't have to fear me. Because God's going to give you the spirit of power. You look at Acts chapter 2, you see a spirit of power. The Holy Spirit comes on you and gives you the ability to say the things that you need to say and act the way you need to act so that other people around you know that He's in you. It's power today. And love. You know what love is? So let's express it to one another. We have to express it to one another. You know, it's just petty of us. It's just silly of us to look at people inside of our community and say, I don't like them and them and them and them because of the way they act. I don't like them because of the way they treat me. I don't like them for what they say. I don't like them. I don't like them. He gave us a spirit of love so that we could change people. And what do you expect from somebody that doesn't know God? You expect them to love like God? You expect them to pour it out like God pours it out on you? You expect too much out of them. But God expects out of you the expression of love to them so that when they see you loving them through thick and through thin, and even when they've treated you bad, they say, wow, why in the world would you do that? Why would you love me through all of that? It's because you love God. He's given me the power, and He's given me the love to overcome and to be able to do that. And He's also given me the self-discipline to be able to accomplish it all. You know what that is, don't you? That's the ability to say no. That's the ability to follow Him no matter what. That's the ability to get up every morning and do what we say. Take up your cross and follow Him. Self-discipline. And when all that comes back around, real quick, Genesis chapter 5. Not Genesis, Galatians, I'm sorry. Galatians chapter 5, verse 22. If you're following that in your life, this is what you have. You have love, you have joy, you have peace, you have patience, you have kindness, you have goodness, you have faithfulness, you have gentleness, you have self-control. If you're following what Paul told Timothy, you have all of those things in your life. I want to ask you real quick, is that your legacy? That you're patient with your family? Is that your legacy, that you love them no matter what? Is that your legacy? Is that you are so kind? Is that your legacy? Or does your legacy look a little different than that? Your legacy maybe just a little bit different than that. Your legacy might be something like that. You know? I took your computer off first. You're welcome. I know this is stupid, but I also know this is you. Right? This is me. If I don't have self-control, I look different and I act different and I am a different man if I don't let God in my life and control it. I'm this man. And this is not the legacy. This is not the legacy that I want to leave. And this is not what I want my children to fan into flame. This is not what I want my friends to see. Right? So today, I just want to ask you, I want to ask you today if maybe we need to make some changes in our life. If you do not look like joy, if you do not look like you're patient, if you do not show kindness, if you have a hard time loving other people, all of Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 and the first part of 23, if you're not that today, then there needs to be some changes in our life so that we become the very thing God desires for us to be. Paul sees it in Timothy, and God sees it in you. So fan it into flame right now, and He's going to give you that opportunity.